Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and it is March 24th. Today we got some pretty fancy automotive news, so let's dive right into it. First thing, Jeep. Jeep Jeep did a lot this week. They decided to bring out a handful of concept vehicles that are quite interesting. The first one, the Magneto. It's the the name's kind of weird, but I like it.
Not based on the X-Men character.
No, it is not based on an X-Men character, but it has a bunch of magnets in it that power the vehicle because it is a full EV. It's kind of different. Unlike Tesla and basically any other electric vehicle that you can buy these days, whereas one big flat battery pack, Jeep, well, they didn't design this as a full EV. So you got battery packs kind of everywhere in 4 separate places. It equates to 70 kilowatt hours, but it's just weird to see that.
Yeah, they've adopted kind of like the traditional motor approach, but instead of a combustion engine, they've put in an electric motor to simulate that whole Pentastar experience without the oil leaks.
Well, I'm sure they'll find a way. I'm not sure if you saw Jason Camisa's Instagram
His
account.
e-Golf.
His e-Golf was leaking oil. Yeah, like you can't make this up.
Yeah. What's really cool about this Magneto version is that they have a 6-speed manual and paired with a electric motor, which is kind of unheard of.
I will love to hear someone rev match this. Like,
how do you know when to shift?
Like when you heel toe, how because I don't know about you, but when I heel toe, I listen to make sure that the revs are at the right place before I slop it into gear. What are you gonna do with an electric motor?
Really good muscle memory, or maybe it does it by the computer.
Yeah,
probably figures itself out.
So just like Justin said, it is imitating the Pentastar V6, which means unlike a lot of EVs out there, this doesn't make a whole lot of power. 285 horse, 273 pound-feet of torque is what it's estimating. So it's definitely down on power. But with the 6-speed that's on it, it should help, propel the Magneto decently well, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's not slow with a 6.8 seconds 0 to 60. It's pretty reasonable for that big Jeep with the big tires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's running, I believe, 35s on it.
It looks like it. Yeah, they look the same as what's on the Rubicon. So,
with the battery pack, so there's one underneath the hood. There's 2 underneath the body itself, and there's one where the trunk or the exhaust would normally be. So I'm thinking in terms of practicality, it's not going to be the best. But of course, this is only a concept.
And it's a 2-door Jeep, so realistically,
you never really had practicality to begin with.
Yep.
Another concept that they did was called the Red Bear. So the Red Bear,
as in BARE, not the animal, the bear.
Yeah. Normally, I mean, the bear actually makes a little bit more sense. Anyways, it's based off the Gladiator Rubicon edition, but it adds some bits here and there. So bigger wheels, lift. It's using the Eco Diesel engine, which is probably my favorite engine out of the Jeep range of the current series. And I mean, it looks quite cool.
It looks good. I mean, from this angle, it does not look like the long boy that the Gladiator is. Really nice proportions and cool little roll cage in the back. I think that's what kind of makes it look better. The one thing with the Gladiator that's always kind of looked weird to me is how low the side of the bed is. I know Jeep was talking about how functional that is. You can just reach in, even with big tires. The side of the bed is very low, but visually it just looks strange because the floor is quite high and the side of the bed is so low, and
Mhm.
so adding in that roll cage thing definitely takes some of that visual,
Awkwardness.
yeah, that mass, and just kind of moves it up, spreads it out a bit. Looks good.
Yeah, I love the color scheme, the red and the matte black that it has on it. I love the
Mhm.
kind of like the retro vibe of the plaque that you have across the rear. It's fitting. And the best part about it is the interior. They stole seats from Volkswagen. These are the GTI seats that they stole.
No, they took like all the truck reviewers and then just like recycled their wardrobe.
Just took their shirts. It's not only on the seats, it's also on the dash, which is really unique.
Yeah. Anyone who talked trash about the Gladiator, that is their wardrobe that
Jeep
has
just
been
stole it.
stolen. Yes.
um, moving on to the next uh, kind of concept Jeep that they got. This is the Jeepster. The Jeepster is a retro looking Jeep, but underneath it's far from that. It's based off the current Wrangler, but it just looks like an old school like 60s commando CJ kind of look.
Mm. It also looks like that the kitty ride. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about.
I
The
do.
one where you put a dollar in and it just kind of gallops. Yeah,
I
really cool
definitely know.
though.
It
Yeah, really classic look. And the chrome is a nice touch. Like that's the thing. We're so anti-chrome these days, I feel like, and I think on a retro looking vehicle it just works.
Yeah, and I love this interior, the red, and it's like the jump seats. They don't have the headrest,
Low
kind of like
back
the old
seats.
school.
Yeah.
Took out the back seats. It's a very cool looking Jeep, and I mean they're probably never going to sell any of this if they
There's no
put on
way.
production.
This would
But
not pass any regulations.
it also doesn't have a roof, which here in Vancouver may not be that great, but I'm sure in other places
Yeah.
this be okay.
It's not carpeted too, which is nice because being a dune buggy type vehicle, they expect you to get a lot of sand in it.
Yeah,
Carpet and sand just don't mix. And so,
and
yeah,
And then the last one that they got is the Jeep Orange Peels. And that's
deals with
Peels
a
with a
Z.
Z or Z, depending on where you're from.
It's a great name. Said no
it,
one.
it's to reflect the quality of the paint that you're gonna get on the vehicle.
I think so.
Based on just the Wrangler, two-door Wrangler, it has a Pentastar V6. We got 37s on it. It's basically a Jeep Wrangler with half-cut doors and no windows. So you get an open air experience, which is kind of cool. Um, but that's about it. I mean, I don't have much else. What do you got to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting because that Jeep shape has not changed much over the years, past 50 years, really, as we can see with the Jeepster there. But changing the way that door looks makes a huge difference in terms of the overall proportions, I think, and the lines of this vehicle. The roof is pretty nice. But yeah, this is probably the least exciting of the different concept vehicles. We should mention why they releasing all these concept vehicles, I guess, which is for the Jeep event in Easter, which is next month, I guess. Uh, it's the Jeep Safari event at Moab, Utah. So they will be showcasing these cars. It's always a big
Whoa, whoa,
party.
whoa! You can't say cars. These are Jeeps. You
Oh,
say cars, people are gonna get offended.
yeah. So that there's a huge fan base with these. Everyone modifies their Jeep, so it's good to see the manufacturer getting in on this as well.
Yeah, they're basically telling you what to expect in the future and what you can do with their vehicles. The only one I would probably say that we can probably see in our future is the Magneto. A full electric Jeep is going to be on its way. There's the 4xe that's going to be coming out soon. It's just the next
Yeah,
step.
it is, and I mean I don't see Jeep slowing down, at least with the Wrangler at all, and electric is the way of the future, and so it just makes sense that we kind of have to tease some of these electric concepts. And we've got the 4xe, and electrification is definitely going to happen with the next generation Wrangler.
Yeah. And fully with electrification, it's Canoe, a brand new brand that is from Silicon
Makes
Valley.
cars, not canoes. Not to be confused with the other method of
And it's
transportation.
it's spelled a little differently as well. It's Canoo. So they're
Hmm.
making a pickup truck, a van, as well as a delivery vehicle. It's kind of their phase of vehicles. They're also going to be making cars in the future, but this one is it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think this is a really compelling product because first off, it's the shape. I mean, you can't. That's the first thing you'll notice with this. It's got a cab forward design, so we don't have a big hood like you do on a lot of trucks. That's kind of always been the advantage with vans compared to trucks, except for the Nissan NV, which has the massive hood. But what that does for this is it reduces the overall length to only about 184 inches, which is kind of between your compact and mid-size sedans in that kind of size range as far as length goes,
Mhm.
while still be able to carry 4x8 sheets of plywood, because the truck bed can,
Extend.
it will open and it will extend, and you can enclose that. So not just like Subaru Baja where we had that kind of dinky little extender. We have a real enclosed bed, with sides, and so yeah, that's really neat that you can do that with a 4x8. You can't do that on any mid-sized truck, from what I know, at least.
Not
Not
enclosed.
Yeah, and not with like a big cabin like that.
Mhm.
Used to be able to do it with like the regular cabs. We do have a frunk as well. The frunk converts into a table, like a workspace. Really popular, I think, among the overlanding crew. I think there's the bedside folds down, the front folds down, the back folds down. There's a side step, so you can get onto the roof easy. So they're already showing it with camper accessories, which is really cool. It's got a very rugged look to it. Steel skid plates all underneath, which you kind of need to in an electric off-road vehicle.
Yeah,
Uh,
got to
really
protect those
keep that
batteries.
safe. Yeah, and there's recovery points. It's really exciting. I mean, steer by wire too. That's something worth mentioning because being a cab four design, they want this to be kind of modular and configurable. The pickup truck is not going to be the only variant of Canoe's electric vehicle, and so having a steer by wire, brake by wire system makes a lot of sense. You can kind of play around with where you want to put the seats, the steering wheel, and stuff like that. You're not tied to a steering column. It reminds me a lot of that Volkswagen Doka truck that you see from time to time here, but I think they're popular maybe in Europe. They're based off the Transporter, and you have that crew cab shape and then a truck bed, little truck bed. But this one's got a really respectable truck bed, even with the extender fully open. We're still under 213 inches, so your average Tacoma, Colorado, that's kind of the length you're looking at. And another nice thing with this cab forward design is no front overhang, which is great for approach angle.
Yeah. So something I wanted to speak of in regards to the cab Ford design. When you're looking at this, you're thinking, oh, it's kind of like those like maybe COE type trucks where you're actually sitting right at the front. But in fact, you don't. You actually sit behind the front wheel. In front is basically an open space. You should get pretty decent visibility up front, but you got the steering wheel and of course everything behind that in front of you. So it's very different in terms of how it's designed. But because of this design, and it's you're not shifting the driver all the way in front of the front wheel, you actually don't get a lot of space within. On their Instagram, they showed that behind the front seats, there's basically no room. You may be able to get some jump seats in there so you can have two kind of side by side and looking towards each other, like Wrangler or sorry, not Wranglers,
Or
Rangers
Ranger.
of the past. But this is not a large vehicle by any means.
Yeah, 184 inches is it's a small sedan these days.
Mhm.
I'm sure they could play around with it being so configurable. Electric cars, you don't have to worry about quite as much. You can stretch that chassis a little bit, and if there is a demand, I can totally see them making a full crew cab configuration for it. I don't know. I think this is a really exciting truck. I think this is more realistic as far as what people need. 200-mile range, that's pretty solid. Up to 600 horsepower when you go with the dual motor version. And so if this size of vehicle is going to be really nice. The Cybertruck, as exciting as that is, it's a little bit too big for some city dwellers. Hummer as well, they've got their EV coming,
Mhm.
almost ready, it looks like. But again, that's going to be massive, really cool trucks. But I think this makes a lot of sense, and I could see myself owning something like this just because of the length. I think that is a big selling point. That's
Mhm.
one of the reasons I don't want to keep my F-150 is being the longest configuration possible. It's like 240 inches long, which is a good, how many feet is that longer than this? About 5 feet longer than this canoe truck, while still not be able to. I'm still not able to hold a 4x8 sheet closed because I don't have that kind of extender. I only have a 6.5 foot bed, so it'd be hanging out of the back. So this makes a lot of sense. I think and you have a little bit of storage behind the front seats, but not a lot.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think this is definitely a cool new vehicle. Cool brand. I like what they're going for. It kind of splits the difference between like Rivian, because Rivian, like their new truck that they're putting out, it's in a way it's kind of similar. It has a lot of those capabilities, storage areas, and whatnot. But this, I think, takes it to another level where it's just a little bit cooler. And they're going
Yeah,
for a different market. They're going for the mid-size market rather than a full size. And that's
yeah.
cool, right?
I just
Like,
love how functional it is.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
mid-size is an exciting segment because yeah, full size they've already gone towards electrification. You're going to start seeing more and more either whether it's a plug-in hybrid system, regular standard hybrid system or full electric. We're going to see that a lot more with the full size trucks. Um F-150 is already there. I think mild hybrids on some of the other American trucks. Tundra's coming out. We'll see what's up with that kind of drivetrain setup. And then obviously aforementioned Hummer and the Cybertruck. Those are going to be full size. And so I really like this segment. I think it makes a lot of sense. For Vancouver, I think it's the perfect size. I think a full size crew cab these days is just way too much vehicle. I remember just going down like Commercial Drive to go grab dinner. Taking the F-150 is a chore because it's so wide and so long, and just finding parking on a side street is just not possible. Yeah,
yeah, definitely, definitely. This is a I mean, people ragged about the Ridgeline being, not the perfect pickup, but I always said the Ridgeline is the perfect pickup for like 90% of people.
it is. It's so functional as well. I think the problem with the Ridgeline was always the styling, but this is this is weird, but it's kind of cool. Like I
It's
think
quirky weird.
yeah, it's a nice kind of weird that I think hopefully people will catch on to this. I don't think people will rag on it too much for the styling. I think Ridgeline, it's always just been either a hacked up pilot or the first
Odyssey.
generation was just really strange. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, this
Well,
this is quirky and really charming, I think.
speaking of strange design, it can move on into the Tucson. Hyundai
Yeah,
has moved on into a very edgy design with a lot of their newer vehicles. We see that with the new Elantra, the Sonata, and now the Tucson. It's different. Um, I don't want to get any door dings on this because with the creases that it has on it, paintless dent repair is not going to be cheap.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. The panels are going to be so stiff, and yeah, we talked briefly about the Tucson, but we've got a bit more news about kind of what's coming to North America now.
Hmm.
Um, this, yeah, I think
So
this is going to be
there's
huge. The big deal is really the plug-in system.
Yeah, so there's going to be three models. It's going to be a regular gasoline, there's going to be a hybrid, and a plug-in option. So the plug-in option is going to battle with RAV4 Prime, which is basically like there's RAV4 Prime as well as the Escape plug-in, but the Escape plug-in is only front-wheel drive, if I recall correctly. So this plug-in option will have all-wheel drive, just like RAV4.
Hmm.
Although RAV4's rear wheels are actually just driven by an electric motor. But in any case, you're looking at about 28-mile electrical range on the plug-in hybrid version, and it'll be cheaper than the RAV4. As we know, the RAV4 Prime is impossible to get right now. If you want one, you can put a deposit down, but you're not likely going to get one until the end of the year, if that, because they're just that popular.
Yeah, that's kind of been the trend with the RAV4 hybrids, and for quite a while now, at least the last 5-6 years, even with the previous generation. I think having a good alternative is huge. The Tucson, the interior looks better than a RAV4.
Mhm.
As far as materials go, it's honestly gonna be hard to be worse than the RAV4 these days. Uh, and that's the thing. People will buy that car um, regardless. I mean, the RAV4 makes a lot of sense, but they can cut a lot of corners here and there and charge more for it because of the brand value and
The,
how proven that drivetrain is. The
they
residual
have a
value.
loyalty.
Yeah, the residual value is insane. You can't deny it. That car, that's the only reason I really bought the RAV4 hybrid, was that I know that this car is not going to depreciate. Uh, and there will just continue to be a shortage of this. COVID only makes things worse for the shortage. And yeah, I think visually to me, this looks more compelling than a RAV4 hybrid.
Mhm. Because you know fuel economy is one of its highlights. I just want to touch on that a little bit. The base model, the with the 2.5 liter four cylinder, you're estimated to get about 28 miles per gallon. With the hybrid, you're looking at about 38 miles per gallon. And with the plug-in option, you're looking at 70 miles per gallon E. I never know how to calculate the MPGE. It just never makes
It's
sense to
so
me.
variable depending on what your commuting characteristics are like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way to say, but this is nice. I mean, we commented before that the interior design is a little bit nah. It's it was promising, and then they kind of gave up with a big slab of gloss black in the middle. But overall, I think it's a really cool package. Lots of styling on the outside and the inside, and just yeah, really Tucson's always been a really strong product, I think,
Mhm.
and this just carries on that tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Moving on from tradition, Bentley. Bentley doesn't stray far from tradition. But they release a new vehicle, the Continental GT Speed.
Yeah, it looks great in that picture. I mean, it's really low slung, really aggressive. We got unique aero a little bit. It's subtle, it's still a Bentley at the end of the day. You're not gonna see the giant GT wing and canards on the side, but it looks pretty special, I think. The black grille is a nice touch. Interior is pretty cool. 10 piston front calipers with the carbon ceramic system. Carbon ceramic brakes are always they're always like an iffy point for me because they don't work that well on a street car. They don't modulate quite as nicely as traditional iron brakes, and for the kind of driving that most people are going to do with this, this is not your weekend warrior track car. At the end of the day, I don't
No.
think it makes sense, even though it probably weighs over 6,000 pounds. I don't know if it really makes sense to do carbon ceramics. I know they love to put it in there to look expensive and be expensive, but I would if they gave me an option to opt for iron brakes, I would always pick that for a car like this. Like if it's a GT car, I want to go on a nice cruise, long road trip. I don't think carbon ceramics makes any sense,
Hmm.
but it's all about the flex.
Yeah, I mean, the Bentley Continental GT was never about a vehicle that makes sense. I mean, under the hood, it's W12, 6 liters, 650 horsepower, 664 pound-feet of torque. That doesn't make sense. Like 0 to 60, it's only 3.5 seconds. It's not like blazingly quick, but it's
But this weighs as much as a house, so it's fair. It's fair, and it's not about the sheer number with Bentley, right? It's about
yeah.
how you get there.
Well, I mean, you'll get to 208 miles per hour in a house real quick.
Yeah, 6,000 pounds and just flying down the autobahn at 208 miles per hour. This is the car to do it. Yeah, good consumer advice this week on kicking tires.
Yeah, the best.
Yeah,
Because it is consumer advice. I mean, this thing, it's going to cost more than the current one. The current one costs like 224,000 US.
base.
So look to get one at like 300K or so.
Yeah, I mean, what else is new about this Continental is we've got all-wheel steering, which is
Mm,
we see it on all the new supercars these days. Is at low speed it will turn this direction, at high speed it goes this way for stability, blah blah. And then we also have the first use of an electronic LSD on a Bentley, which is pretty cool. So I think there is some real performance under this thing. I mean, they don't necessarily phone it in. It's just ultimately at the end of the day, you have this kind of money, you have your other dedicated track toys.
yeah,
Is
absolutely.
how I always stand with this car.
I,
But it looks cool.
yeah, it definitely does look cool. Speaking of looking cool, if you want to look cool with your entire family, you can move on into our next topic, which is the review
This
that
week's
we
review.
yeah, the X5M competition.
It's so cool.
Oh,
I
I've
saw
had
one on the road the other day. I'm like, they make a competition. I didn't know. I don't know much about these cars. I don't really. I don't really look into like high performance SUVs at all. And I'm like, oh, they make a competition now, and it has road presence. Like that's
mhm.
one thing I noticed. I think it's the rear bumper and the big exhaust tips and the color, everything. It's just so cool.
It is very, very cool. It's the same 4.4 liter that's in the M8 Grand Coupe that I tested a little while back. It's plenty of power, 617 horse, 533 pound-feet of torque. It's it's stupid quick. Like 0 to 60 is under 4 seconds. I think it's like a little bit over 3.5.
Mhm.
It weighs quite a bit as well, like 5,400 pounds, but it's ridiculous how fast this gets off the line. The launch system on newer BMWs, they work amazing. Not a hint of like slip or anything like that. It just launches. This thing is
Yeah.
stupendously quick.
617. Yeah, it's we used to roast these cars when they first came out with the Cayenne Turbo and the X5M. We're like, who the heck would ever buy this? But it's just so cool. I mean, the interior is amazing.
Mhm,
uh Exterior is amazing.
mhm,
The performance is amazing, and
mhm.
it's relatively practical. I mean,
Yeah,
fuel economy aside and the MSRP aside, which honestly, if you're spending this much on a vehicle, fuel economy doesn't matter.
no, it doesn't.
I don't think we should be commenting on the fuel economy, but no, I think it is kind of your one car to do it all. How does it handle though?
Amazing. So if you put it onto sport mode, the all-wheel drive system is able to send more power to the rear end. It does rotate. It's like
So nimble.
it feels a lot lighter than it actually is. The suspension is able to kind of just dial in the perfect amount of damping. Some people say that it actually rides too stiff. I mean, I've been in really bad coilover vehicles. I had a Civic with Megan suspension on it. It's horrible. So to me, this wasn't that bad. I mean, it was decently comfortable. My wife found it okay as well. So yeah, I think it was fine for me. But for some people who like a softer ride, this is not it.
Yeah, and I noticed they're not using run flat tires, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, well, because they're winters, they have the winter sport Conti tires on it. Or
Right.
winter sport Conti, whatever
Yeah.
the
From what I
Conti.
know, the summer tires are also non-run flat for this model.
Oh, okay.
They're usually most of the M cars they don't do the run flats, and that alone makes a huge difference in terms of the overall ride quality.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what's this color called? Marina Bay blue.
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
Fabulous
it's
blue. It's beautiful. That's what I can tell you.
yeah, and I mean, it's expensive, but it's not because you got to compare this with the Urus, you got to compare it with
Yeah.
the Cayenne, at least a GTS,
Yeah,
if
the
not a
GTS.
turbo. Turbo, those are going to be over 200.
Yeah.
Even the Levante, a GTS, which is not even the highest trim, starts at what your car tested for 146, 147. And
Hmm.
I mean, as far as fit and finish and overall build quality, engineering, everything, I mean, this X5M is going to be far superior than a Levante. I can tell you that.
Right.
uh,
When I
Maybe
was
not as special because it's a BMW at the end of the day. They're everywhere, but everywhere
yeah.
for a good reason. And you can honestly tell that this is like something different. This is not your typical grocery getter soccer mom X5 when it pulls up.
Mhm. I just noticed they're on Michelin's and not Conti's. My bad.
Oh yeah, those look like the Pilot Alpine 5s. They've got the funky tread on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was looking at the pricing for this, this X5M, yes, at 147 is quite a bit. But I was actually looking like if you get the X5 M50, which is like one step down,
Mhm.
non-actual M, but a sporty M version of the X5, it's like $26,000 cheaper.
Mhm.
And if you're gonna lease one, you save a heck of a lot. Um,
Uh,
I did some calculations, which I actually put at the end of the video here. It's surprising how much you can save if you was to
Go M50i.
go M50i.
That
Yes,
was what we were thinking with the M5 as well. That was
yeah,
kind of the takeaway. But I think visually, this one does look more special compared to just what the M5 versus the M550
right.
look like.
But is it $40,000 over 4 years better?
Yeah, that is something to consider. Definitely,
Yeah.
that is good consumer advice. I mean, it's not insignificant, right? But
No.
I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, 120, 140. I was looking at just even like a 340 or a 440i cost these days, and it's like they're up to 80 grand now. So as far as pricing, everything's gone up a bit. I can't be thinking 2010 numbers what a X5M went for then, because those were or like a '06 4.8. That was the most expensive. Like the first gen X5 with the 4.6 and the 4.8
Mm.
IS or whatever, that thing we thought that was like insane how expensive that was, and it was probably like 95,000, something like that. Um, but they've pushed it. You know, you're
Well,
getting more value for the money in a sense.
tons more.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4.8 back then, I mean, yes, it was a great sportier driving vehicle, but it didn't do comfort that well.
Yeah.
This actually, in my opinion, does comfort really well. I drove it out to Langley with my entire family in here, seating five, and the two front passengers, we have the heated seats on, the rear they have the AC blasting. It was a very comfortable journey overall. Had the radar guided cruise on, the lane keep, like it was like any other car. It was great.
hmm Unlike any other car, though, the M does have the M exhaust, which is a point of contention for a
Oh,
guy like you who
yeah.
has been
So
treated like a criminal for the last 6 months or so.
It's been a year since that
It's
happened.
been a year. Holy crap!
It's been a year since that happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's
Vancouver's most wanted. J.Mak reviews.
So I guess let's move on to the final topic that we want to go over this week is a situation that we have here in Vancouver. There are a few officers in the VPD department or VPD is fully Vancouver Police Department that are handing out vehicle inspection notices. I myself was driving a press BMW M4, perfectly stock M4 because it's a press car. I was testing it for review purposes. I was just driving down. Can't remember where it was now, the street name, anyways. And there was a police officer on my left. He pulled me over shortly after, lights on and everything, and he started yelling at me and saying, "Do you know what happened to your exhaust? Do you know where your exhaust is? Why doesn't your vehicle have a muffler?" And I was like, well, first, I think it was like a Tuesday, which means it's the second or third day that I had the vehicle, which means I don't know anything that's in the back end of the M4. I don't know if it has a straight piped exhaust or if it has a canister back there. I don't know. But he pulled me over and basically said that the vehicle is illegal to drive. So essentially, a brand new BMW M4, according to this police officer, is illegal. And it's not just me. There's a lot of vehicles in the Vancouver region that was pulled over for a louder exhaust or sportier vehicle. There was another person that had an X3 M40i. He was pulled over because he had a louder exhaust. He went to court recently, and the judge said he is convicted of having
Yeah, and I
the
think
louder exhaust.
we really do need to mention these are factory exhausts. These are not an Akrapovic or some kind of fancy aftermarket exhaust that we put on ourselves. This is the way the car leaves the dealership. This is not something you're modifying in any way.
Yeah.
Obviously with a press car, but with that X3, it was a bone stock exhaust. And the officers have now gotten to the point where they're straight up saying, if you drive this vehicle in sport mode, that's illegal, which is honestly, I don't know what's the PG way to say it, but it's BS. Yeah,
Bananas.
you can go, with your tax deducted income and go buy this car with 25% luxury tax, fully legally, everything above board, and you could leave that dealership and within 10 feet they could pull you over and tell you that car that Transport Canada has okayed is illegal. Like, that is literally what they could do. If they wanted to, they could just camp outside the BMW dealership, the Porsche dealership, Ferrari dealership, anywhere. A Huracan recently, and again, bone stock exhaust, illegal, because they're not the big flaw I see is they're saying if you their testing methodology is kind of the issue too, because we have drivers that are just driving normally. They're not hooning, they're not doing burnouts, drifting around corners or anything like that, right? They're just driving along, and then they will get you to pull over and then tell you to rev it to whatever ridiculous RPM that you would never touch in a normal driving situation, put it in whatever exhaust mode, and then they'll tell you your car is illegal. That to me is as insane as telling people that, hey, can you take that car around the corner at 200? I mean, your X5M that does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Can you just go around that corner, just flat out for me, put it in sport mode, and just flat out for me? Oh, you're speeding. Now you're gonna lose your license. But you never caught me doing anything. That's the big messed up part too, is not only are these cars fully stocked, but these drivers are not doing anything to incite, police attention. They're just driving normally, and they're just being pulled over. In the case of the Huracan, it went to court, and the driver is just like, "Well, was I speeding? Was I doing anything, kind of like stunting or anything like that?" And the officer admitted in court that he wasn't driving; he was just driving normally. Which honestly, in a Huracan, even if you're in the most aggressive mode of the exhaust, which is I think Corsa, it's under normal driving, it's not that loud. Like unless you're in manual mode and revving the piss out of it, not shifting, like going up to 7,000 RPM, it's not going to be that loud. But it's easy pickings now because they know that that car stock is going to go over 83 decibels
Mhm.
in no matter what mode, uh, regardless of whether they're doing testing properly or shoving their decibel meter into the exhaust pipe, which a lot of people have now photographed and videoed officers doing. But that is just insane to me. That luckily I haven't been on the receiving end of this, but I know better than to take my M2 into Vancouver.
Yeah, and that's the worst part. Like Vancouver is like the hub here in BC. It really is. It's the biggest city. Well, not the biggest city. It's the city that you want to go into because it has the most businesses. It has a lot there. Stanley Park is a beautiful place for me to take a lot of these photos. Um, Anytime that I am in a vehicle with more than 4 cylinders, I do not enter Vancouver now. Simple as that. I just don't enter Vancouver. When I had the X5M, I didn't touch Vancouver. I drove on the highway on Vancouver. Of course, you have to go through Vancouver to go to North Van and other places because the issue is not in any other city other than Vancouver. The it's
Yeah.
just there are
There's only a few isolated incidents outside of Vancouver, but it is predominantly and overwhelmingly in Vancouver. And it's literally like a handful of officers issuing, it's 90% of the tickets are probably issued by about 5 or 6 officers from what we've seen. It's
and
insane.
so the worst part of this for me anyways is as a family man, um my son, he's like 16 weeks old right now. He doesn't care about anything. But when he gets a little bit older, I'm going to introduce him to cars and I'm going to introduce him to vehicles that have nicer exhaust notes, like the X5M, like an M4. But, you know, if he decides one day to pick that up, you're like, oh, you know what, dad? I love how the M4 sounds. I'm going to buy it myself. Does that immediately say that he is a criminal because he bought an M4? According to this officer, yeah, it basically is. And I just don't think that's right. I mean, there are worse things in the world. There's a lot of people like doing these street takeovers and whatnot, drifting, and I don't condone that. Street racing, no. I'm just enjoying a vehicle the way that is meant to be enjoyed, just normally driving.
Yeah, following the speed limit, not tailgating or driving aggressively or anything. You have a nice car. It's not a crime to have a nicer car. It just happens to have a louder exhaust. Um, and I think for a judge to openly admit in court that he thinks that these cars are unnecessary and we should all just drive Priuses. Like, I mean, as much as I love the Prius, it's that's not how you like law enforcement works. A bit about my background as well. I have studied criminology for 10 years. Like it's something I care about, and at one point I definitely was considering a career in law enforcement, but this is just so disgusting to me that I can't imagine anyone wanting to work where this type of behavior is not only okayed, but it's being proliferated not only in the departmental level, the municipal level with the VPD, but even when they bring it up to the judicial level, that they're still reinforcing this bad behavior because there's no way about it. Like this is insane, and it's criminal what they're doing. Honestly, it's harassment at this point,
Mhm.
and I will say, yeah, like you mentioned, there's way more dangerous stuff happening on the roads right now. Let's not talk about other issues, racial issues, or anything like that. But just in terms of cars, there's way more dangerous stuff happening than people driving stock showroom cars off the lot. And they're picking on them because it's easy pickings. You know why? Because they're not authorized to chase after you. So they know that respectable family man in X5M, he's probably going to pull over for me. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to have any issue as a police officer pulling this guy over. It's not going to, I'm not going to end up hurt or shot or anything. It's going to be an easy target for me to get my numbers up. But if, said dangerous drift guy is speeding down the city and cutting in and out, I can't chase him, because if I chase him and I end up driving up the curb, or he ends up driving up the curb over it, people's lives are in danger there. And so that is way more risk to ultimately it's about getting the numbers and justifying my existence as a police officer is how I see it. I don't know if I can advocate for this, but honestly, if this kind of stuff keeps happening, people are just going to start running, because they're going to know that you can't chase after them. And it's just going to make things worse. And I think things have to get a lot worse before it gets better. But the way things are, people have zero faith in the system now. And because of that, I have zero respect for your authority as an officer, and I'm just going to take off. I think that's ultimately what this will end up with, and it's just going to be so lawless because, at one point, it's just going to become, things are just going to escalate, right? People, usually things start off as something small, a small group complaining online. Eventually it escalates into a riot, and that's what I feel like we're going towards now that the courts are involved, and now that the courts are backing up this BS. I think stuff is going to get really messy and really violent, and we gotta be realistic about doing law enforcement properly.
And this is not just like a BMW thing. Like we mentioned earlier, I think it was City News did a segment on this maybe a year or a year and a half ago back. There was a few Porsche owners that had the same issue. There was a Porsche owner, he spent his hard-earned money buying a 911. He was driving down the street, and he got a notice for vehicle inspection on that vehicle. It's inspection is one thing. It's basically a time waster. You have to get your vehicle inspected at an authorized facility. Fine. But along with these are now becoming not just the vehicle inspection, but a ticket for unnecessary noise, saying that your vehicle is malfunctioning, thus it's causing unnecessary noise. And this is not just a ticket that you can pay for. If it is, it's $109 ticket, but also adds 3 points to your license. For example, I'm driving, like if I have an M4 and that's my daily vehicle, cop pulls me once, it's fine. I pay the 109, I get 3 points. That's okay. But once I get pulled over another time, it's additional cost of my insurance because I'm driving a legal car. But according to this officer, it's illegal. And to Justin's point, the whole Prius thing, well, that was actually brought up by a judge. There's a transcript that was fully exported out of this court hearing. The judge said, and I'm paraphrasing here. He basically said, you don't need a vehicle like this. I have a Prius and it's absolutely fine. As an automotive enthusiast, a Prius is, no offense, Justin, I know you have one, but no, a Prius is not absolutely fine. It's not the vehicle that I want to.
Way better cars out there, and like just more engaging cars. And it's just like, just because one officer doesn't feel like it's necessary doesn't mean that what you're doing is inherently dangerous. I think one thing to take away as well is the whole unnecessary noise thing. The reason we have these tickets is that some idiot, cannot be sitting outside of my house doing, their backfire and redlining the shit out of their car. Oh, we gotta bleep that. Redlining the crap out of their car outside of my driveway and just like annoying me at 2 a.m. Like, unnecessary noise needs to exist, but you're using it in the wrong way. It's just like the speeding thing. Speeding tickets need to exist. I don't think anyone would argue that. But if you're harassing people for not even speed, like I wouldn't even say going 51. This is people going 49, and you telling them to go 51, and then telling them that you're going to jail for going 51. Like that is insane. Like
Yeah.
yeah, you're driving below the limit, but because your car is capable of exceeding that limit, or it sounds like it might be, that's the other thing too. They don't even need to test anymore. They don't even need to prove that your car is over the limit. They can say even if I think in my professional opinion that your car is going to be over the limit, it's over the limit.
Yeah.
And so you're guilty beyond proven. Yeah, it's just like it's insane. I can't. I'm so angry about it.
I can
And
tell.
and you know what? I do want to call out that there is a big group of enthusiasts that are working towards fixing this issue. But I think one of the things is you have to recognize that this is now a systemic issue, right? This is not something that's one officer, one bad apple. This is the whole system is engineered to be against our group essentially. And so if you're trying to stay within the realms of this system to beat itself, I have to say there is a hint of insanity in that statement alone, that there is a paradox that you can use them to beat them at their own game. I don't think it's possible. We'll see. You have Jimmy here has one of the best cases, I think, because he is driving a factory car and he has factory backing. So we have a real lawyer on this case, and so hopefully this does come to something. But for all the other cases, it's just the money and resources and time and legal know-how to actually do anything is, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think the court systems are going to be favorable. And keep in mind that if you're found guilty, this goes to appeals. Appeals like, okay, maybe we'll let you appeal this, and it goes even higher up the court chain of command. If they at that point decide that these officers are working and they're doing their job properly, then it's game over for us. That is, the higher up you go, the bigger the risk. And so if you lose at the very top, that is now giving them permission to keep doing this whole free for all. And just be careful, everyone. But yeah, just recognize that the system is quite flawed. Um, and they at the end of the day, they will always work to protect their own.
Yeah. And that's the sad truth about Vancouver right now. Not a great city to be a car enthusiast. There are better places in the world to be. And Vancouver, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be one of them. So, in any case, I think that's about it for today. We're going to wrap it up here. Is there anything else that you want to add in, Justin?
No, but if you guys have any other topics you want us to discuss on future episodes, do bring that up. You can, message Jimmy on Instagram, Facebook, on our YouTube here. Just comment. If anything, we'll talk about anything car related, even if it's not specifically about one car. And well, there's just a topic. I know a lot of people are concerned about what's happening in the States now with the EPA and modifying cars. If there's other topics, we'll do our research and we might talk about it on future episodes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everyone in the audio land of podcast. That's what it's called.
It's not iTunes anymore. So yeah.
Take care, everyone.